Happy Easter! Hot cross stagflation. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Ainslie Insights, brought to you by Ainslie Bullion, Ainslie Crypto, and the Gold and Silver Standard as the Ainslie Group celebrates 50 years. Today, welcome back, Alex. And in the lead up to Easter, the one economic issue in the front of everyone's mind at the moment is the price of cocoa. How on earth are we going to be able to afford those chocolate eggs this year? How are you going today, Alex?
I'm going well. How are you?
Such a great topic today, one that's very interesting and one that's probably close to all our hearts in this Easter season. So, let's start us off. What's causing the current cocoa price surge?
So obviously we're coming up to Easter, so people like my household are buying a lot of Easter eggs. And but it's actually been happening since the beginning of the year. So maybe the chocolatiers have been buying a lot of cocoa, but predominantly there's been some production issues. Cocoa is produced off cocoa trees, usually around West Africa, because of El Nino and some really hot conditions. Basically, their production is down. So that has created shortages for all the cocoa manufacturing facilities. On top of that, there's been speculation in the market again. So, I think maybe going short cocoa this close to Easter was not a wise idea, but it was one of the most shorted commodities up until about 2 weeks ago. So when it was around, I mean, it had still climbed dramatically. It had started around $2,000 a tonne. 2 weeks ago, it was $7,500 a tonne, and yesterday it reached $10,000 a tonne, and it's come back off a bit. So people were shorting it at $7,500. So I think there's some people that aren't buying Easter eggs this year.
And just to clarify that particular part on the shorting, that's why that results in the price going up is because people are betting the price will go down, but when it keeps going up, they effectively have to buy back in, which is further buying to the market. That's how that works, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. And it's just called a short squeeze because the short sellers are forced to buy higher, so they're squeezed.
Yep.
And then the last one is over the top of shortages, issues with older plantations because older trees don't grow as much cocoa and get disease. Usually they deforest, they find a new forest, plant a new plantation and keep going. There's new government regulation where cocoa buyers are told that they can't buy from deforested places anymore. So because of the government regulation, it's throwing complexities into the market, which is increasing the cost and probably increasing the ability of farmers in the West African areas to really know, how and where they can farm too. I'm sure that creates some problems for them.
I can see that being absolutely a cause of problems. And I'd like to stick in a little bit more on that because there's a lot of implications when you start having government regulations on commodities. Is this something we've seen before? Is this something we can expect across other commodities? Because there's certainly a global agenda around things like deforestation or a green agenda generally. Is this an issue that can affect other things?
Government regulation is one of my favorite things. So basically, they decide that they want something in a certain way. It certainly happened in the gold industry, where we now follow rules where it's responsible gold. So it can't be bought from mines in Africa where it's mined in an irresponsible way with child labor and things like that. So you've got to be able to follow the supply chain all the way through. And it is a costly exercise in ensuring that all your suppliers do it. Having it in the cocoa industry is exactly the same. So basically, a new government department is started, which costs more taxpayers' money. And that government department goes and audits companies who now have to produce reports saying that they have done the right thing, and they track through all of their suppliers which is obviously a costly exercise. So you have increased taxes in having a new government agency, and you also have increased costs within the company because you've got to audit your suppliers. Just an idea, which governments just don't do. If they were actually themselves as one department able to audit commodities, they wouldn't be pushing exactly the same. So say there's 5 gold companies in Australia. Well, there's 5 gold companies in Australia now checking every single one of their suppliers. Or for
Mm.
cocoa coming in. And then you've got a government agency checking them. Well, if the government agency actually just checked on the way in, you'd save about 5 departments in 5 different businesses, and it'd be the same amount of work for a government agency. But that would be
It seems like you're
too
suggesting there might
resourceful.
be a little bit of red tape involved in government there, Alex. It's
Or
a
interestingly, for liquids in Victoria, I think we have to report to 5 or 6 different government agencies what is held on our site.
and why that
and
couldn't be one efficient overview. Yeah, absolutely.
We report it slightly differently to each government agency.
It boggles the mind. So just sort of turning this conversation a little bit back to the broader economic environment, do you think this is a bit of a warning about stagflation? Because it's something that we've talked about a little bit and keeps popping up. Is this a warning that we might see sticky inflation in particular commodity areas that create a bigger problem for the economy as it stands, or certainly going down the road?
Well, food inflation is still up everywhere at the moment. So Australia's number, I think today was 4.5%. Europe at the moment is about 5.1%. The only place that's down appears to be the US, which is 2.6%. And I think those numbers are questioned a little bit more than they used to be. So food inflation and in commodities is up. Copper is up. Gold is up, lumber is up, everything is up, probably not as high as it got to during COVID, but still going up. And the last time, interestingly, that cocoa was up was in the 1970s. So 1976 was its peak. And from low to base, it went 10 times. Currently, cocoa is about 5 times on our current trajectory. And the 1970s is that famous era for stagflation. And there's a lot of graphs and a lot of information now that when they raised interest rates initially in the 1970s, inflation started to drop off, and then it started to skyrocket. And we've spoken about some of the things that can lead to that inflation is, well, for starters, higher interest rates have led to higher inflation within housing. But then we've got some other supply shocks going on, especially around shipping worldwide. So by having a global economy on commodities, inflation does not look like it's going anywhere. And you've got countries now hitting recessionary walls. New Zealand's in a recession. Switzerland just raised rates. The ECB's now started talking about, dropping rates. Switzerland just dropped rates. ECB's talking about dropping rates, all because they're all hitting a recessionary wall. And we're starting to see signs of inflation coming back in. So they're going to have their hands tied a bit.
And that's probably my last sort of point or question to you about that is the hands tied aspect. I mean, central banks here, we've been back and forth on this so many times about what they have to do next, but what happens if we see these commodity prices continue to rise and they simply can't lower rates like they pretty much need to? Do we end up in a no-win situation where half the world does one thing, half the world does another thing? I don't know. What do you sort of see as the outcome here?
Probably that's going to be the way. I mean, the major cause of all of this we've spoken about before is the US dollar mainly being a reserve currency and having out of control government spending, and that inflation just pushes through to everywhere else. So unless they fix it, which isn't going to happen in an election year, we're most likely to see stagflation.
So a lot of pressure on whoever's in next in the US position, president and government for sure. But for the moment, I suppose we just got to probably downsize our expectations for Easter this year.
Tell that to the children.
Yeah, maybe not. Maybe don't mention that to them. Thank you so much for that today, Alex. Such an interesting topic and lots in there. So thanks for your work on that.
Thanks again.
Thanks everyone for watching. We'll chat again soon.